but Himika didn't make the transition. She's still in the backstage.
Yep, give me a second. I'll go back and help her with that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we will get started. It's 11:03. Welcome, everyone. Today's talk is about growing skills through deliberate practice, and it's going to be presented by Tim Rayburn. Welcome, Tim. I'll just do a brief introduction of Tim, and then I will hand it over to him. Feel free to ask any questions you have during the talk in the Q&A section, and Tim will be happy to answer all of them for you. So Tim is a vice president of consulting with Improving, which is a full service ID company with its headquarters in Plano, Texas, with offices all over North America. Tim is passionate advocate of apprenticeship and mentorship in corporate environments, and he has been awarded the Microsoft MVP in recognition for his expertise and community leadership 11 times. That's impressive, with award areas spanning from BizTalk Server to Asia. He's an author and can be found speaking across the nation on leadership, technology, trust, and mentoring, as well as career management. He lives in North Dallas with his wife and his two loyal dogs, Radagast and Dresden. So thank you, Tim, for being here, and I will hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Himika, for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. So a little bit about me, as was mentioned, I'm an 11-time MVP and author. I'm a crazy barbecue fanatic. If you're interested in Texas barbecue, reach out, we'll talk. I do a ridiculous amount of it. I'm also a gamer and do all sorts of things, including I formerly owned my own game store. But today we're here to talk about growing skills through deliberate practice. And so I wanted to start off by spending some time dwelling on what is the definition of deliberate practice. So this is sort of the textbook definition. The deliberate practice refers to a structured and systemic approach to skill improvement where individuals purposely engage in activities designed to improve specific aspects of their performance. And as we go through today, we're going to talk about what it takes to succeed and see this actually play out. Now, the concept of deliberate practice really came into existence out of the work of a psychologist. But I do want to say, like this concept of improving, this concept of getting better, like it's at the heart of our company, Improving, right? It's literally right down there at the bottom. It's what we do. The improving is what we do. So we spend a lot of time internally talking about and teaching about how to get better, right? This is something that we want all improvers to do. We want the entire industry to do. And in IT in particular, getting better is a must. The industry is constantly growing, constantly changing. There's always new things on the horizon, be it the next front-end framework, the revolution of AI and what it's going to mean for our fields. All of this means that we have to be lifelong learners and students. And deliberate practice is how we can go about being that lifelong learner and student efficiently, okay? And so let's look at how this came about. So there's a psychologist by the name of Anders Ericsson, who is Swedish. He's worked at Florida State for many, many years, and his area of expertise was expertise itself. It was the concept and study of expertise and expert performance. and studied it in a lot of various areas. And like most academics, produced great papers and was involved in really bringing forward this in the realm of psychology. But most of us would never have heard of his work if it weren't for this Canadian journalist by the name of Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm in 2008 wrote a book called Outliers, The Story of Success. And Outliers drew heavily from the work of Anders Ericsson, and in particular set out a concept that let us take this idea and go, let's take this concept of deliberate practice, this structured and systemic approach to improvement, and brought one of the most somewhat controversial findings of Ericsson's research into the common parlance, which is the 10,000 hour rule, which was this concept that it takes roughly 10,000 hours of deliberate practice in order to achieve expertise in a field. Now, the problem with this is a lot of people heard this and were like, well, okay, that means it takes, if there are roughly 2,000 hours of work in every year, then if I'm working in a field for 5 years, then I've achieved that level of expert. And that is misreading what has been said here, because of the fact that the point of Ericsson's research was not that it took 10,000 hours of doing it that made you an expert. It was 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, which means you needed 10,000 hours of structured work, deliberately focused on growing your expertise. And that's where most people misinterpreted this. And we wound up with a bunch of people who were like, it's just enough for me to put in my time and I will become an expert. I am very well aware and talk with people all the time that in IT, we will find people as we go through organizations who in a very small number of years have achieved great success, advancing far faster than their peers. And then you'll run into people who have 20 years of experience, but it's really 1 year of experience 20 times, that they've been doing the same thing that they were doing in year one, they're still doing today. So we need to recognize that the 10,000 hour rule is potentially a trap unless we're doing deliberate practice very well. So what does it take to do deliberate practice very well? Well, I'm here to put forward that if we're going to do deliberate practice, then we need to not make poor choices. And so we're going to talk today about the traps of passion, obsession, ownership, and repetition as traps to deliberate practice and how they can work against your success, even though they might feel at the time like they're moving you in the correct direction. And as you can see, it forms the acronym POUR that will help keep you in mind of the fact that these are troubling behaviors that we want to avoid. So let's walk into the first of those and let's talk about passion. So a quote here from one of my favorite musicals, Evita. Evita exemplified the example of what it would mean to just come out of nowhere, to burn very, very, very bright, right? And in one of the songs in the musical, she says, or else I could choose time. This And this points out a challenge of passion. It is that passion is short-lived. And there's a reason why it's short-lived. Okay, passion is overrated and short-lived. If our goal is long-term and deliberate practice and growth, then why are we attempting to drive it based on passion? This concept underlies why every year gym memberships jump in January, and by March, none of those people are still showing up, because of the fact that, frankly, it's passion alone that's trying to drive a lot of people's efforts to improve their physical fitness. So psychologists have a concept that they talk about, which is when they look and examine what it takes for humans to form relationships with anything, there are 3 areas of our psyche that go into this forming of a relationship. And these are, we have an affective relationship, a cognitive relationship, and a conative relationship with things that we have a relationship with. So affective is the emotional reaction, right? And passion is affective. It's driven. It's, you can see the synonyms here in the line of, it starts with values, and it's attitude, conviction, passion, and passion and compassion, as it goes and gets more and more refined and higher level. But and we also have a cognitive relationship with things. We have knowledge that we know about things that are how we form relationships. But the final piece is that instinct and commitment and purpose and mission, the conative or conation, that concept is, conation drives and creates a grit, a perseverance for us. And so we need to think and focus on making sure that we have a conative relationship with this. That is why we're pursuing deliberate growth. So what does this mean? To me, this means that we want to bring ourselves into the effort, but we need to do so with an understanding that deliberate practice is hard, that we need to prepare and keep our self-worth and psychology in the correct place to be able to pursue this even through troubles and times when we don't want to. This is the aspect of, I'm going to keep getting out of bed at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. I'm going to keep working to try to understand dependency injection when it's just driving me nuts. I'm going to draw, a human face by hand as I attempt to master the art of drawing over and over and over again, and continue to push into it even when I don't want to, even when my conviction is lacking and my passion is lacking. I know that there is value in the repetition itself and in continuing to stick with it. And so I need that grit and perseverance. That's going to be the thing that really allows me to persist and stay with this. But it means that we need to make sure that why we're pursuing it from the outset is not just based on that passion alone. It's not that passion is bad, but what keeps us going needs to be more than passion. So after we've talked about passion, the next thing we need to talk about is obsession. So, yet another musical quote here, right? The concept that you can be obsessed by longing, right? And that results in being doomed from the start. So the definition of deliberate practice tells us that we need a structured and systematic approach to skill improvement. Obsession says, well, I want to get there as fast as I possibly can, so I'm going to start pursuing this, and I'm going to do it every single day, and I'm going to set aside everything else in my life, and stop spending time with my kids, stop spending time with my friends, because I am pursuing and charging in with obsession around this desire to get better. The fact of the matter is that deliberate practice speaks against that. It says, I want something that's systematic. Give me a cadence. Give me a specific and recurring interval. And that needs to be at a sustainable pace, that we can't just throw everything else out of our lives. Whatever we're pursuing, we have other responsibilities than just the pursuit of that skill. If we don't, if we're trying to master the systems on board the space shuttle and we're being supported by the entirety of NASA as they take care of making sure that our laundry is done, that there's meals for us every day, etc., and that our only job is to learn this, then fine. In those extreme examples, there may be points where getting obsessive about your cadence is reasonable. But for most of us, as we examine how we are going to approach time and our deliberate practice, we need to really stare in and go, there is a need for cadence here. We need to make sure that it is a sustainable cadence that we can keep and stick with while not letting everything else about our lives come crashing down just because of the fact that we're pursuing skill growth in a particular area. And now, from obsession, we move to ownership. And this is the one that drives people a little bit nuts when I talk about it, I'll be honest. And, the concept that I am in charge of my own destiny and that I should own and be the person solely responsible for my own success is something that humans and people as a whole have a very romantic appeal to, and Americans particularly have this romantic relationship with the concept that I did it all on my own. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and I succeeded by myself. And the reality is nobody does anything by themselves. And coaches and mentors are absolutely critical to being able to succeed. And you shouldn't try to just do this on your own. Physical fitness remains an easy example here. It is very, very easy to show up at a gym and put in lots of effort, but get very little effect out of that because you're not doing the right types of exercise to accomplish the goal that you're actually interested in. Coaches push you, challenge you, get you out of your space. They provide vital external feedback to you to be able to really let us hone in on success. And you have to seek them and you have to get them involved. And you need to do that, you are relinquishing some control. You are relinquishing control of what you believe is your ownership of this journey and saying, coach, help me grow and help me find my own cadence or my own best way to do this. Help make me a better me. But in so doing, you're relinquishing some of that pure control and ownership of the process. And you're saying, coach, you're in charge of some of this. And so I really think that this is an area that a lot of people struggle with, and they would legitimately, if you sit back and examine and ask, why didn't I engage a coach, engage a mentor on this very important area for me, be it physical fitness, business growth, etc., you will generally find that while one of two things, a fear of embarrassment or a fear of relinquishing control, are going to be the two reasons why people choose not to engage a coach. And both are really bad reasons, because slightly less overall ownership but more likelihood of success should be the obvious argument for why to engage a coach. And if you're worried about embarrassment, it's only, your potential for embarrassment is only higher without a coach or a mentor. So we need to recognize that this want of ownership is itself a problem, and it works against our desire for deliberate practice. And we need to give it up and make sure that we're engaging a coach appropriately. Now, it's worth noting that if you need to walk into this area slowly, that in the time of generative AIs, etc., if you haven't come up to a chat GPT or the equivalent and said, give me a training plan for how to improve my software development skills in C# over the next 90 days. And if you haven't gone through that, they're reasonably good at that. But that is only the prescriptive aspect of a coach. And that's not the most useful aspect of a coach. The most useful aspect of a coach is that it can examine, watch, and give you feedback on your actual performance. And that's an area where today the AI systems are not capable of really meeting the need in that space. But an AI system can be your first coach if it makes it easier for you to start getting some sort of coaching involved. And finally, let's talk about the trouble with repetition. And the real challenge with repetition is that deliberate practice, once again, calls us to purposefully engage in activities designed to improve specific aspects of our performance. Our human brains are very interesting. And one of the things we like are patterns. And, we find, just looking at this graphic here, we find it appealing and symmetrical because of the fact that there is a repetitive pattern on that. And yet, the challenge there is that it's comfortable. Our brains like to seek comfort. And when we're looking at activities and challenges, to make ourselves better, discomfort needs to be the winner of the day. Our challenges need to be crafted to improve us, to improve our skills, and to make it so that each time we're going in to do work, that we're growing and becoming slightly better than we were previously, to slightly challenge us outside of our comfort zone. And our brains, when we alone are involved in setting our challenges, will be able to keep in mind that we want to grow until we reach a point where we level off and we're like, cool, this is notably harder work than I was previously capable of, and now I'm just going to sustain that. We want to get back to a comfort zone. We don't like pushing into discomfort regularly. We can push our brains to do it for a short period of time. To push our brains to do it over a long period of time takes a coach, takes somebody else who's reminding us of our overall goal and our overall mission to find new challenges that push us and grow us into new areas. When it's time to just set aside an exercise that you've always done or a practice you've always done because it's time to free up time to go do wholly new things. When we're talking to programmers, for instance, there comes a point well before where most people would think they should, that the best way to encourage a developer to continue to grow their skill is to set aside working in their primary language altogether and force them to go learn a second, third, or fourth language, because of the fact that it gets them out of the comfort zone, makes them learn the tropes and patterns of a new language, and yet they grow their overall skill because they have done that, because they have had to think at a higher level, find the abstractions that work across all of their languages, modify their mental pathways to be able to think about programming in the light and purview of this new language as well, and incorporate that into their mental model. That's done by challenges. That's done by moving into discomfort. And so repetition alone, getting up 5 a.m., go do 30 minutes on the treadmill. If you've been doing 30 minutes on the treadmill for more than a couple of weeks, then you're probably not continuing to challenge yourself. You're not continuing to push yourself into new space. And the time you're spending doing that is not deliberate practice. It's exercise, but it's not deliberate practice. It's not growing you to be a better athlete and continuing to do what you've always done at your day job, and is in software is not making you a better programmer just because you keep doing it. If you're not being challenged and pushed into discomfort on a regular basis, then you're not growing. You're at best just keeping pace with keeping your skills sharp to where they currently are. You're doing maintenance and not deliberate practice. So, how then, if we've looked at these 4 areas, passion, obsession, ownership, and repetition, right? And we've said these are the negative behaviors that we want to avoid. Well, what were the positive ones that we need to turn each of these into? And that is, we need to turn passion into conation. We need to have that grit and perseverance to succeed where we don't think we're going to succeed. We need to turn obsession into cadence. We need to set a regular interval at which we are going to do this that is sustainable with the rest of our life and what we have going on, and that we can commit to. We need to let go of ownership and accept bringing in coaches to be able to really give us that external viewpoint that examines our actual work and says, here is how it can be better. And out of that, we need to move from repetition to challenges, to things that are consistently moving us forward, that make us grow and stretch. We need to fight against our psyche's natural want to retreat to comfort and keep a deliberate effort around pushing into discomfort through challenges. If we do these things and focus on these 4 C's, this is how now we can find success through deliberate practice. We can grow and develop any skill that we want to, as long as we are doing so consistently and with effort. Now, deliberate practice isn't necessarily the way to learn all things. It's an important way to approach learning and trying to, as quickly as possible, develop to a level of expertise in something where you want a level of expertise. if you're a hobbyist woodworker who, when there's a project around the house, goes, oh, you want to know something? There's a need for a bookshelf. Let me go make a bookshelf for my daughter's room. You're not engaged in attempting to become an expert woodworker. If you were, then you would be seeking to regularly build new things and grow your skills beyond any external need. You would be doing it solely for the purpose of growth. So these 4 C's are important if your focus is deliberate practice, but it is perfectly fine to continue to take opportunistic opportunities to learn and grow in new things without having to get to the point where you're saying, this is something I'm deliberately practicing. But if you're trying to change careers, or if you're trying to grow yourself within your existing career, and so you need to get to a new or higher level of expertise than you have ever had before, and you're really looking to do that at an expert level that would allow you to pursue that professionally if you wanted to, then these 4 C's are a very important thing. Now, there are things that I myself, for instance, have a high degree of focus on. I do deliberate practice when it comes to how I move in software. I do deliberate practice in how I move as a manager and a leader inside my organization. And I would tell you, I do deliberate practice when it comes to how I learn and grow in barbecue, for instance, and trying to become a better barbecuer and create better and more tasty barbecue. Do I do these at the same level of cadence? I don't. And there are some things like barbecue where I'm perfectly fine with, I'd like to have at least 1 cook day a month where I'm trying to push myself into a new challenge, try a new thing, and move forward that skill. Am I doing that every single day? No. Does a professional chef do that at a much higher cadence than I do? Yes, they do. Am I okay with that difference? I am. So this is a place where we have to recognize what level of commitment we're making to a particular practice and adjust accordingly. And with that, that is what I've come to share with you about deliberate practice today. And so, Himika, do we have any questions that have come up during the session?
There aren't any at the moment. We did have some problems with our Q&A section. So everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat and we'll moderate from there. We'll give you a minute or 2 to do that.
Yes, and I will also put into the chat my email address. If anyone has a question afterwards, I'd be happy to do that.
We have one.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, so we have one question which says, how do we find a good coach or a good way to challenge ourselves?
Yeah, so a good coach, it starts with a relationship, right? So I generally don't recommend approaching, strangers who have no investment in you or your personal growth and seeking mentorship there. Sometimes that will work, but you're asking something of them, and so if there is an existing relationship, it is a far better idea. It is also important to remember that your coach does not need to be somebody who embodies everything that you seek in your life. It needs to be someone who embodies the excellence in the skill that you are seeking to develop. I've had coaches in spaces where they would have viewed me as a mentor in other areas, but in the particular area I was looking to grow in, they're a principal technologist working for Improving who's a Java developer could be a mentor for me in growing my Java skills. They might in turn look at me and go, but if I wanted to learn about leadership, I would look to Tim and ask him to do this, and that's fine. They don't have to always be up in your organization. They simply need to embody the skill you're learning to grow more than at a higher level than you currently sustain. And you should also recognize that it is entirely possible that along your journey, you're going to go through multiple coaches, that you might reach the point where, you know, when I left you, I was but the student. Now I am the master. I have exceeded my coach's ability to coach and grow me. And that's fine as well.
Thank you, Tim. We have another question about conation. So Paul asked Tim, can you speak a little bit more about the definition of conation? That's a new word to me, and I feel the same way.
Yeah. So conation is really, it's important to understand its relationship in how humans form relationships outside of its two pairs or its two siblings, right? Which are affective and cognitive. And so it's this concept that in how our brains work, our relationships with all things are based on, you know, an emotional relationship with things and a knowledge-based relationship with things. And then where does that thing, how does that drive and how high is my purpose and mission alignment with this thing? And it's important to recognize that difference because, again, a lot of people are going to go, well, that's an emotional reaction. It's really not. It's about drive. It's about mission. And so I'll use an example. A lot of people have a cognitive relationship and an affective relationship with their personal faith and spirituality. And then you'll meet people who are out there driving and pushing, and you just feel that different in their life, that it's much more present and out there. And that's not because they have a higher emotional reaction or a cognitive understanding about their faith than others around them. It really is that difference in drive and grit and purpose and how much that aligns with how well developed their personal missional orientation to that is in their psyche. And this concept, this part of us exists for all sorts of things. And so we need to recognize that grit and perseverance can be developed, can be grown, I can align with it more over time and really develop that conation with whatever it is that I'm trying to grow a relationship with, be that my company, be that my skills and my desire to grow my skills, be that my spouse, be that my spirituality. It is about how our brains form these relationships. That is what conation is truly about. And like I said, has to be viewed with its two siblings of the affective emotional relationship and the cognitive knowledge relationship, because the three go hand in hand to define what a relationship is to our brains.
Thank you, Tim, for that. There's another question from Scott. Where can we learn more about this? Any good books, videos, blogs, etc.?
I have done most of my learning on this through reading some basic psychology work. And so I would encourage you to check out some introductory texts in those spaces, but I don't have a really great, this is the thing, go find it, like business book that's distilled it down at the current time. Unfortunately, I don't have the Malcolm Gladwell Outliers equivalent for this area, but really do feel that this is a key portion of how we think about and keep up our grit and perseverance to be able to succeed.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. If there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit more about next week's talk. It's about how to tell whether software development is being done to the right level. And I will provide you guys with a link to that. So it's called Rare, Medium, or Well Done, Finding the Right Level of Doneness in Software Development. And it's going to be delivered by Robin Fuentes. So hopefully you guys have the time to check it out. Thank you everyone for coming today and participating in this great talk. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, and we'll meet you back at backstage.